السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. رمضان كريم، رمضان مبارك، كل عام وأنتم بخير إن شاء الله. تقبل الله صيامكم وقيامكم وجميع صالحاتكم. آمين يا رب. Inshallah, in this video, we will be talking about one of the greatest gifts that the month of Ramadan brings for us. And that amazing gift is the practice of self control. Brothers and sisters, self control is what makes us exceptional and powerful. A person who can follow the religious discipline and have self control will be better wherever he is placed in all the aspects of his life. Now, let us look at the purpose of fasting during the month of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O believers, fasting is mandated upon you as it was mandated upon those before you, so that you may gain taqwa. So the purpose of fasting is to gain taqwa. A question could be asked, what is taqwa? Taqwa includes many things. It is to take care of the religious duties mandated by Allah, to avoid the things that are prohibited by Allah, to practice patience when facing difficulties and calamities, and to enjoy the life within the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to do all these things only and only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Majority of us mainly struggle in three things. Number one, pushing ourselves to perform the religious duties. Number two, resisting against the urges and desires. Situations come when haram becomes so tempting that an individual fails to resist it and falls for it. And number three, practicing patience when things are against us or what we want, and especially when we are facing difficulties and calamities. If you pay attention to all these things, you will find that they not only depend on our knowledge of deen, knowledge of halal haram, knowledge of acts of worship and mandatories, but also on a good level of self-control. Now you might be asking in your mind, okay, I got that self-control is important, and I got that taqwa is very important, and taqwa is the goal, gaining taqwa is the goal of fasting and devotion in the month of Ramadan. But how do we develop the taqwa? How do we develop the self-control? Well, here the religious devotion prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the month of Ramadan, it amazingly helps us. It helps us to practice self-control and to increase resistance against the temptations and the evil. If we examine the demands of our body and the self, we will find that there are three demands which are most basic and most powerful. Number one, demand for food and water, on which our survival depends. Number two, demand of physical intimacy, on which our next generation's survival depend. And number three, the demand for sleep and rest, so that we may gain our energy back, we may restore the physical and mental strength. All these three things are very powerful, but at the same time, basic and natural demands. Eating, drinking, enjoying physical intimacy, resting and sleeping are the things we do most of the time on a daily basis. If these three demands remain within their limits, then fulfilling them helps us to move forward in our lives in a healthy way. But majority of the time, these three demands become traps for us. And they become traps in such a way that as soon as they are out of control, we get caught in their strong, invisible web and turn into their slaves. When a weak soul is overwhelmed by these demands, the demand for food makes it a slave to the stomach, takes him to haram food, haram drinks, and prohibited substances. Carnal passions drive him to the depths of animality, and the comfort of the body leaves him with no power of will. When we reach to this level, we find ourselves nothing but slaves of our desires and the lust, and spend our days and nights just in fulfilling them. Fasting and performing regular and Taraweeh prayers train us in practicing self control. While fasting, we stop consuming food and water and fulfilling the carnal desires, even in a halal way, from dawn to sunset. After the whole day of hunger and thirst, when we break the fast, we don't lie down but get up and worship Allah more than the normal days. And we also reduce our sleep, night sleep, and wake up before dawn to take the suhoor meal. And we do this only for the sake of Allah. We maintain this self control out of our own will and wants. As there is no police or guard to watch us if we are fasting properly or not, there is no external power forcing us. All of this goodness comes from within ourselves because of our determination that I will follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will fast the way He has commanded. I will stand in the nights the way He has commanded me to stand during the nights in the prayers. And this practice is not just a one-day exercise. One day may not be enough for such an exercise. This practice is done by us for the entire month. This training program has been made for 696 to 720 hours throughout the year for Muslims. In this way, by keeping these three biggest and most powerful demands of the self under control for an entire month, the power and confidence is created within ourselves that we can control our desires and physical needs according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not a once in a lifetime training program, but a month every year from puberty until death is devoted to this practice so that self-control is renewed and increased each year. And the fact of the matter is that we do all this not for worldly gains, but we do this to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is just some amount of iman in us that keeps us strong in the month of Ramadan and makes us realize that we can do it. In other words, the month of Ramadan shows us our hidden strengths, which, if groomed properly, could make us beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and an extraordinary person and well-disciplined people in this world. Brothers and sisters, let us make a good effort to take full benefit from this great month. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our fasting and standing, the prayers and the charity, and grant us a strong amount of self-control in this world and Jannatul Firdaus in the hereafter. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen.